Hi, I'm Peter J. Ray. Welcome. Today's topic is New York Yankees baseball books. I am a Cleveland Indians baseball fan. However, I love the history of baseball, and that has led me to be a historical New York Yankees fan because I love reading books about Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, Joe DiMaggio, Mickey Mantle, Reggie Jackson, and so forth. Because the New York Yankees, their team and their history is so much wound up in the history of baseball. And and they won 28 championships. You have to give them credit, respect for the noble opponent. Okay, so the first book I want to talk about today is The Babe Ruth Story by Babe Ruth and Bob Considine, 1948. This is a wonderful autobiography of Babe Ruth, and he wrote at the end of the book as he was dying. It's very touching. He wrote this quote: "I've got to stick around a long, long time, for above everything else, I want to be a part of and help the development of the greatest game God ever saw fit to let man invent, baseball." Babe Ruth had an amazing life. He had a very tough childhood, much of which was spent in an orphanage. Then he became a star pitcher for the Boston Red Sox. Then they sold him to the New York Yankees. That's when they started the so-called curse of Babe Ruth in Boston. And of course, Babe Ruth made home runs popular. And strangely enough, before him, the guys weren't trying to hit home runs, but he tried, and he hit a lot, and he had the record for a long time for a career 714 and a single season 60. Very interesting fellow. I thought one of the interesting things was I believe it was the 1932 World Series, ended on a caught stealing. Babe Ruth was trying to steal second base, got caught, and that was how the series ended. That was a strange way to end the series, but Babe Ruth was so popular, the fans forgave him because of what he had done. He had such a big personality, and when I think he won a number of World Series, and very outgoing, played with Lou Gehrig, and real interesting fellow. Really enjoyed life, and really got into drinking too much, unfortunately. And he tended to, he loved to eat and loved women and so forth. Actually, a good guy, a real good guy. The next book is Babe, The Legend Comes to Life by Robert W. Creamer, 1974. Yeah, so this is another biography of Babe Ruth that came out years later and talks about his life. You get more, I think, more time had passed, so this biography is better than the previous one. And Babe Ruth enjoyed the things of this world: food, sex, alcohol, and fame. And, interesting fellow, very interesting fellow. Supposedly the Baby Ruth candy bar is named after him. And I think Babe Ruth really made baseball popular. He in the 1920s, such a charismatic fellow. And then, of course, they have the movie about him. Really interesting guy. And God bless Babe Ruth. The next book is Luckiest Man, The Life and Death of Lou Gehrig by Jonathan Eig, 2005. This is a fairly recent book. And, of course, Gehrig played along with Babe Ruth. This is the story of his life, and he was a big home run hitter also. His parents were German immigrants, real poor, and so he had a childhood of poverty in New York City, and his mother it was very difficult. His father, kind of lazy, didn't do so well for the family. And then Gehrig got into baseball and really became a big, strong fella. Played college baseball at Columbia, and then he played for the Yankees. And they called him the Iron Man because he had more than 2,000 games consecutive played in a row without stopping. And then finally, he was very attached to his parents, especially his mother, and lived with them for a long time as a Yankee star. He was real shy, but finally, he met a woman named Eleanor, and they seemed to have a real good marriage. He was a good man. And then, of course, tragically, he developed this disease, which he died from, which is named after him, Lou Gehrig's disease. And then, of course, on July 4th, 1939, they had Lou Gehrig Day at Yankee Stadium, and he spoke to the crowd and said, quote, "Today I consider myself the luckiest man on the face of the earth." I thought that's one of my favorite quotes because he had such a good attitude. He was sick, and he couldn't play anymore. Because he had this disease where the muscles in his body were atrophying, and he died from that. But he was accepting it, and he had a positive attitude. He was grateful for the career that he had had. And then, of course, there's the wonderful movie, Pride of the Yankees, with Gary Cooper plays Lou Gehrig. God bless Lou Gehrig. The next book is Lefty, An American Odyssey by Vernona Gomez and Lawrence Goldstone, 2012. And one of the co-authors is the daughter of Lefty Gomez, who was a star pitcher for the Yankees in the 1930s. He grew up real poor in rural California, and then, of course, he became very successful as a baseball player. His wife was a showgirl. He experienced fame and fortune, but he was a humble, funny guy. Played with guys like Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, and Joe DiMaggio. Then after his retirement, he worked for the Wilson Sporting Goods Company. Traveled all over the country selling baseball equipment to different stores and schools. He developed alcoholism, but he overcame that. He recovered. And then there's a great quote in the book by his father-in-law, Bill Schwartz, quote, "Without a love of books, the richest man is poor, but endowed with this treasure, the poorest man is rich." Lefty Gomez was a good guy. This is a fine biography of him. The next book is Joe DiMaggio, The Hero's Life by Richard Ben Kramer, 2000. This is a tremendous biography. I really enjoyed it. Very gripping. 528 pages. Joe DiMaggio, the Yankee Clipper, Joltin' Joe. They called him the hero of heroes. He grew up very poor in California, again, and his parents were Sicilian Italian immigrants. Grew up in San Francisco. As growing up, he was very shy, and he was not a good student. He was the 8th of 9 children. And actually, his older brothers wanted to be pro baseball players, but his father was against. His father was a fisherman, and he didn't believe there was a future in baseball. And the fact, actually, because he was younger, the older brothers kind of pressured the father to let him play, because he had stopped some of the older brothers from playing. Although 2 of his brothers did play, Dom and Vince played Major League Baseball. In fact, Dom did real well. When DiMaggio was 15, he dropped out of high school and had no prospects. However, he did not want to be a fisherman like his father. However, he got on a semi-pro baseball team and became a star. And then he joined his brother Vince on the Pacific Coast League team, a minor league team, the San Francisco Seals, and hit in 61 straight games. He batted .399. Wow. DiMaggio had power, speed, and a strong arm. He could do it all. And then he signed with the Yankees and played, and then the rest is history. The first 4 years he played, the Yankees won the World Series every year. And DiMaggio replaced Babe Ruth as a national baseball hero. He was very shy, and they called it dignity. He was very graceful, but he could deliver. His first marriage was not good, to Dorothy Arnold, woman. They broke up, and then they had a son, Joe DiMaggio Jr. DiMaggio was not a good father to this boy, and he saw him very little. And Joe Jr. Really had a bad life. He became a bum. He became an alcoholic, a drug addict, and died at age 57. The Second World War years were tough for DiMaggio because he couldn't play. He was pressured to join the service. And then after the war, from 1946 to 51, they won, I believe, 5 more World Series. So DiMaggio won 9. Wow, that's a lot. And then after that, from 1951 to 1999, his death, his job was being Joe DiMaggio. And he didn't have to pay when he went out to restaurants. Actually, there were restaurants would pay him to come to his restaurant. And he actually became very wealthy from signing his autograph. In fact, he made $3 million in one day just signing autographs. But eventually he didn't really need the money, but he needed to show to himself that he was still a winner. DiMaggio was the hero America wanted. However, according to this book, he was really a selfish guy. In fact, he was not a great man. Actually, his character was not great. And fame this is what fame can do to a person. Toots Shore, who owned the famous nightclub in New York that a lot of people went to. After DiMaggio married Marilyn Monroe, he was complaining. They didn't get along either. I don't think they lasted even a year. And Toots Shore said to him, "Well, why'd you marry a whore?" And that was the end of their friendship. They said that when DiMaggio would have friends, and if he got mad at you, that would be the end. And of course, there were always new people who wanted to be his friend. So, and then in 1994, people were mad about the players making all this money, and then they thought, DiMaggio was from the good old days when the guys played for love of the game. Of course, they never played for love of the game. They needed to make a living like we all do. And actually, at that time, DiMaggio was making more money signing autographs than the players at the time. He was getting paid $150 per autograph. This is a tremendous book. The next book is Summer of '49 by David Halberstam, 1989. And this book has a big part of it is the rivalry that year between the Yankees and Red Sox. And eventually the Yankees won. But Joe DiMaggio playing center for the Yanks, and then Dom DiMaggio, his brother, on the Red Sox, also playing center. Ted Williams on the Red Sox, Phil Rizzuto for the Yanks, Johnny Pesky, of course, they named the right field foul pole after him, Tommy Henrich. This is a fine. David Halberstam is a wonderful author. The next book is Joe and Marilyn by Roger Kahn in 1986. So this is about the slugger and the sex pot. This was really something. When Joe DiMaggio married Marilyn Monroe, these two very famous people, they didn't have a good marriage, and they broke up, but they remained friends. And actually, and then of course she died young. And they said that every year he would go to her grave and put flowers on her grave until his death. And when she died, he was hoping they'd get back together. Of course, but her death ended that prospect. So supposedly, he did love her, and after her death, he was really devoted to Marilyn Monroe. The next book is Damned Yankees by Douglas Wallop, 1954. This is fiction. It's a novel, and it's a story about this character named Joe Boyd, who is a diehard Washington Senators fan who makes a deal with Satan. And then he becomes Joe Hardy, baseball superstar, and leads the Washington Senators to the pennant. But at the end, he doesn't go to hell. He avoids hell because of the love of Lola, this woman who's another devil victim. So this is an interesting novel. The next book is 10 Rings, My Championship Seasons by Yogi Berra and Dave Kaplan, 2003. Yogi Berra won more World Series than any player ever. 1947, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 56, 58, 61, and 62. Everybody loves Yogi Berra. All these things that he was a tremendous player, and then he was a manager, managed the Mets also, and he used to like to swing at bad pitches, but he was a good bad ball hitter. He could hit them. His son Dale played Major League Baseball as well, and Yogi Berra, these famous sayings like, "It ain't over till it's over." Which is true, And he would talk about, he said, "Oh, don't go to that restaurant. It's too crowded. Nobody goes there anymore." So anyway, sorry about the telephone. The next book is My Favorite Summer, 1956, by Mickey Mantle and Phil Pepp, 1991. Mantle's talking here about the year he won the Triple Crown, which is very, very tough. The highest batting average in the league, the most home runs, and most RBIs. Finally. Okay, the next book is A Hero All His Life, a memoir by the Mantle family, by Mickey, Marilyn, Mickey Jr., David, and Dan Mantle, 1996. This is a wonderful book. His Mickey Mantle's wife and his children, they all talked about him and his life, and they were honest. He was an alcoholic. And but he recovered in AA. Actually, tragically, he didn't quit early enough. He died. It's too bad we lost Mickey Mantle. He died because his liver was damaged. But he was a good guy. He was human, and they're honest about him, and they wanted to pay their respects. And he had his problems. He had his inner demons based on his childhood, and then of course the challenges of fame. People don't know how tough it is to be famous. And Okay, so the next book is October 1964 by David Halberstam, 1994. This is a book talks about the 1964 Yankees-Cardinals World Series, which included had guys like Mickey Mantle, Roger Maris, Joe Pepitone, Lou Brock, and Bob Gibson. The next book is The Last Boy, Mickey Mantle and the End of America's Childhood by Jane Levy, 2010. Mantle grew up in Commerce, Oklahoma. Of course, he was this tremendous star in the 1950s and 60s. He was not a good husband, and he was not really not a good father because he wasn't home enough for his sons. But he was beloved by millions. Yeah, the talks about here how when he was sexually abused as a boy, and he had disclosed that to his wife, and he kind of had anger. He was angry with women in general, and he was kind of a womanizer. I think it was connected to his childhood. But anyway, this Jane Levy spent time with him and interviewed him, and he did have a drinking problem. And anyway, this God bless Mickey Mantle. He's a good fella. The next book is Ball 4 by Jim Bouton, 1970. He was the 1964 Yankees World Series hero. This book really was an eye-opener, and actually, because he told the truth about what was going on in baseball. There was the tendency of the public was to sort of deify the players. They were so tremendous, so amazing, and really it wasn't true. They weren't that great. And he talks about the immaturity and some of the things they were doing that were less than respectful. And so actually a lot of the players got very mad at him for this, because he was the public. This was an eye-opener. And he was kind of banned from the Yankees for a long time. They didn't want him around, but eventually I believe he was forgiven. He played for the Seattle Pilots, the Houston Astros. He talks a lot about the immaturity of baseball players. He talks about Lou Piniella, Mickey Mantle, Roger Maris, Dooley, Womack, Sal Magley, Tommy Davis, Larry Dierker, Joe Morgan, Jimmy Wynn, Kurt Blefary, and Roland Sheldon. The next book is Thurman Munson by Thurman Munson with Martin Apple, 1978. Yeah, Thurman Munson was the tremendous catcher for the Yankees in the 1970s, and played on the 2 seasons they won the World Series. And very sad that he died. He died in an airplane crash in 1979, just the following year. So he was a big Yankee star and very fondly remembered on that team that had all those amazing players like Mickey Rivers, Roy White, Lou Piniella, Chris Chambliss, Greg Nettles, Reggie Jackson, Billy Martin, and of course the owner George Steinbrenner. The next book is Reggie by Reggie Jackson and Mike Lupica, 1984. Jackson played for the Oakland A's, won 3 World Series, and briefly for the Baltimore Orioles, and then the Yankees won a couple World Series, and then later for the Angels, and then the A's again. And so he talks about these guys he played with, like Raleigh Fingers on the A's, Joe Rudy, Sal Bando, Gene Tennis, Bill North, Catfish Hunter, and Bert Campaneris. And then on the Yankees, see Reggie, Sports Illustrated called him the first super duper star, and he had this conflict with Billy Martin, and then there was this strange triangle with George Steinbrenner and Martin and Jackson, and he had problems with the other guys on the team because Reggie was kind of arrogant and selfish, but he could play, he could hit. And there was that famous confrontation. There was a single hit to right. It was a national TV game on Saturday. The ball went through his legs, and Billy Martin took him out of the game right then, which you should never do, because he humiliated Reggie. And if you're going to take a guy out, take him out during the half inning when he comes to the dugout. And then Jackson was real mad, very, very angry, and they almost had a fight in the dugout. And then they gave away Reggie bars. He said, it was kind of like Babe Ruth bars. So Reggie Jackson, he hit those 3 home runs in the World Series. Wow, just imagine. The next book is Catfish, My Life in Baseball by Jim Catfish Hunter with Armin Katei on 1988. Yeah, Catfish Hunter was the first big free agent. He was a star pitcher for the Oakland A's, and then he played for the Yankees, won a couple World Series, although he didn't do that well. I think he had one good year, but I remember I was being real disappointed. I was hoping Cleveland could sign him. And he died of Lou Gehrig's disease. I was very sad. I felt real bad about that. He was only in his 50s. Guy from North Carolina. Jim Hunter, and the owner in Oakland, thought he should have a nickname, Charlie Finley, so he came up with Catfish. The next book is The Bronx is Burning. 1977, Baseball, Politics, and the Battle for the Soul of a City by Jonathan Mahler, 2005. Well, this is about 1977 New York City. The city was troubled financially and socially. There was a lot of crime and white flight, white people moving to the suburbs. And the mayoral race is depicted. Abe Beam, Ed Koch, Bella Abzug, and Mario Cuomo were the candidates. There was a blackout, which led to a lot of looting and chaos. And then there was the Son of Sam serial killer. And of course, throughout all this stuff going on, the Yankees won the World Series with all these tremendous players. And very memorable players. And at the time, I hated the Yankees back then, the 70s Yankees. But now I really love them. I'm very nostalgic for the 1970s Yankees because they were an interesting team, and they did real well. The next book is Inside the Yankees, the championship year, Ed Lynn, 1978. Well, this was something. There was this is about the 77 Yankees. A lot of fighting on the team, a lot of jealousy. And but they did well. They had Mickey Rivers, who was a center fielder, funny guy who could run. Roy White in the left, who was pretty quiet, but a real dependable player. Lou Piniella in right, who became a manager later. A real interesting guy, outgoing. Greg Nettles at third, played for Cleveland, had power. His average wasn't so hot. Chris Chambliss at first, put the Yanks in the World Series in '76. Willie Randolph, tremendous second baseman. Bucky Dent at short. Thurman Munson, the catcher, and then Sparky Lyle was the relief pitcher. The next book is October Men by Roger Kahn, 2003. This is about the late 1970s Yankees again. There are a lot of books on that team. And according to this book, Joe DiMaggio inspired Reggie Jackson to hit those 3 home runs in Game 6 of the 1977 World Series. I guess they had gotten together and had a talk. The next book is The Goose is Loose, the autobiography of Rich Goose Gossage with Russ Pate 2000. Gossage started as a starter for the Chicago White Sox, but then became a relief pitcher. And then he was signed by the Yankees as a free agent. And I felt sad because then the Yanks traded Sparky Lyle to Texas. It was kind of sad, but I guess Gossage was better. He talks about the guys he played with, like Dick Allen and Reggie Jackson and so forth. He played for a number of teams, I believe, after leaving New York, but was a tremendous closer for them. The next book is Number One by Billy Martin and Peter Golenbach, 1981. Yeah, this is Billy Martin. What a guy! The manager who was so charismatic and actually did a good job. It was really driven. And this is his perspective on his experiences with Reggie Jackson and George Steinbrenner and so forth, and how much he loved being the manager of the Yankees. And he'd been a star for the Yanks in the 50s. The next book is Balls by Greg Nettles and Peter Golenbach, 1984. And Greg Nettles was the third baseman. Played for Cleveland. Very important part of the Yankees teams in the late 70s, and later played for the Padres. I think he got to the World Series with them. The next book is The Bronx Zoo by Sparky Lyle and Peter Golenbach, 1979. The copy of the book that I had a baseball with a mustache on it. Sparky Lyle, the closer for the Yanks, and then he got traded. So he's telling his side of the story of that very interesting team, all those fellas, and all the chaos that was going on. But then they won. The next book is Billy Martin, Baseball's Flawed Genius by Bill Pennington, 2015. This book has 503 pages. It's fairly new, and it's this complete story. It is a wonderful biography of Billy Martin. It talks about he grew up poor in Oakland, California, became a star on the Yankees. Actually, he was a World Series star. He had some big hits, and he made some tremendous plays in the field. I believe he was a second baseman. And then he became a manager, managed for different teams, the Twins, Tigers, Rangers, Yankees, and A's. His good friend was Mickey Mantle, and of course they used to drink together. That was part of the reason they traded Billy Martin, because they thought he was a bad influence on Mantle. And it broke Billy's heart. That's all he wanted to do was play for the Yankees. And then, of course, eventually he became back as a manager, and which was his dream. That's what he loved doing. He was managed the Yankees from 75 to 77, and then also in 78, 83, 85, and 88. I felt real bad when he died, because I really liked him, and he was entertaining, and he died, I think, in 89, so that was tough. There wasn't going to be any more. He would have probably managed the Yankees again. He was married 4 times. He was not a good father. He was an alcoholic as well, and a womanizer. He had a temper. He got in a lot of fights, and it's kind of sad. He was drinking. He was in a bar on Christmas Day, and with another fellow, and that led to his death because they were in a car accident. And he, as a manager, he promoted. He's very aggressive, and he really, it sort of inspired the players to play harder. He pushed for stealing home. That was something he believed in, which is a very rare thing. The next book is Knuckleballs by Phil Niekro and Tom Bird, 1986. Niekro played for the Yankees in 1985. I think he won his 300th game. Talks about Billy Martin, Yogi Berra, Dale Berra, Ken Griffey Sr., Ricky Henderson, Omar Moreno, Ron Hassey, Don Mattingly, and Ron Guidry. Niekro, of course, played for many years for the Atlanta Braves. He talks about Ted Turner, and then he played for Cleveland. Gave us one good year. The next book is Damn Yankees by Bill Madden and Moss Klein, 1990. Now, this book is about how the Yankees had gone into decline in the 1980s. They had a 18-year World Series drought from 1978 to 96. And this book is really blaming George Steinbrenner for the constant turnover, constant bringing in new players and firing the manager and so forth. The next book is All Roads Lead to October by Maury Allen, 2000. Well, this, things did turn around because the Yanks won 4 World Series in the late 90s and then one in 2009. And so this gets into guys like Derek Jeter, Bernie Williams, Paul O'Neill, all these fellows, Chuck Knobloch, and Jorge Posada, Mariano Rivera, all the players that helped the Yankees. Just imagine that this was tough on me because that's the era then the Indians were a strong contender. The Yankees won 4 World Series in 5 years. Wow, really something. The next book is Zim, A Baseball Life by Don Zimmer with Bill Madden, 2001. What an amazing life Don Zimmer had. He was on the Dodgers, who won the 1955 World Series. He was the manager of the 75 Red Sox, who got to the World Series, the 84 Cubs, who made the playoffs, and of course in the late 90s he was the coach for the Yankees with Joe Torre. He talks about Pee Wee Reese, his teammate on the Brooklyn Dodgers, Louis Tiant on the Red Sox, and Carlton Fisk, Ryan Sandberg with the Cubs, and of course with the Yankees, Joe Torre, Derek Jeter, who used to rub his bald head for good luck, Paul O'Neill, and so forth. The next book is Zen of Zim by Don Zimmer with Bill Madden, 2004. Well, this is after, actually, I think he had been fired by the Yankees, and I think the cover has a picture of him wearing a Tampa Bay Devil Rays cap. So he went to Tampa. I think Lou Piniella was the manager. Talks about how George Steinbrenner canceled Don Zimmer bobblehead doll night. And they had a conflict, and that led to his departure. And he had a fight with Pedro Martinez in the playoffs during a brawl. He's the right-hand man of Joe Torre. Good guy, Don Zimmer. The next book is Me and My Dad by Paul O'Neill with Burton Rocks, 2003. Yeah, I love the title because for me and my father and I, we would Cleveland Indians and baseball were a big part of our relationship, going to games. And so Paul's talking about his father. He had a very good father, and played for the Reds and the Yankees. I remember well in the World Series, his father, I believe, had died. And he was playing right field, and the fans in Yankee Stadium were chanting, "O'Neill, O'Neill." And he was moved. It was very touching because they were supporting him in his hour of need when he lost his father. And that's really a big part of baseball. The next book is Babe and Me by Dan Gutman, 2000. This is a children's book. involves time travel. This boy and his father, they travel in time back to 1932 and Game 3 of the World Series at Wrigley Field, Yankees and Cubs. And did Babe Ruth call his shot? That was the purpose of this time travel. And according to the story, he did. This is a real nice children's book. The next book is Me and DiMaggio by Christopher Lehman Haupt, 1986. This is a book about from the perspective of a baseball fan, Christopher Lehman Haupt, this author, in the 1979 season. And supposedly it's a baseball fan in search of his gods. So it's about being a baseball fan and that experience, and specifically a Yankee fan in 1979. Well, we're out of time. Thanks for watching, and good luck to the Yankees. Respect for the noble opponent. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.